final moments before the deal was secured, the mood here at Stormont veered almost by the hour between confidence that a deal was tantalizingly close to fears that these talks, even as the finish line loomed into sight, could still stumble. The end, when it came quickly as the final pieces were put in place. Brendan Wright reports now on the day the deal was done.
Dawn broke at Stormont with the deadline for agreement well past and the chances of a deal emerging seemingly slim. However, within hours, what had been only dreams of a settlement began to edge towards the realms of possibility as the main players emerged into daylight, now clearly in a more positive mood.
Well, my view is that we have made some important progress. There's other very important issues that we have to secure before we could go back to our party or our constituency. But we, as I say, we give this commitment. We'll work right up until the very last second.
As the morning progressed and the omens remained good, there was a growing feeling of anticipation and celebration amongst delegates in the media as the conviction grew that they were witnessing history in the making. The Stormont talks, though, have witnessed many a false dawn in the past, and another appeared on the horizon when the Taoiseach and Prime Minister Tony Blair failed to appear for a press conference called to mark a successful conclusion. And it wasn't long before the portents of doom began to appear.
Well, I think there's been no plenary call for a start, so we would have to say that the process is in danger. My understanding is that the Prime Minister has already met with them, so I would think it would be serious enough if that's happening. But all we can do is wait and see what decision that they make.
The potentially disastrous problem transpired to be unionist unhappiness over decommissioning, and their internal party wrangle ended with the abrupt departure of one of their leading negotiators, Geoffrey Donaldson. Uncertainty thereafter was followed with the legendary unpredictability of the Stormont talks, with the almost immediate convening of the long-awaited plenary session, and finally, agreement. Brendan Wright, RTE News at Stormont.
In the final days of these talks, it was the Taoiseach and the British Prime Minister who were at the centre of the negotiations, announcing the agreement at the news conference just behind me outside Castle Buildings a few hours ago. The Taoiseach said it would herald a new era of understanding between unionists and nationalists on the island of Ireland. Mr. Blair said the real breakthrough was that everybody who was party to these talks now accepted the principle of consent. Here's our Northern editor, David Davenpower.
The two Prime Ministers emerged just before 6 this evening to inaugurate the historic agreement they hope will usher in a new era for the island. There was praise for the Taoiseach and for the parties from Tony Blair, who paid tribute to all who had lost their lives in the conflict, suggesting that the nature of today's deal would change relationships in Northern Ireland forever.
The principle of consent is absolute and is throughout the agreement. And the breakthrough is that that is now accepted by all, North and South. Also, those who believe in a united Ireland can make that case now by persuasion, not violence or threats.
A view echoed by the Taoiseach.
My ultimate political aspiration remains the coming together of all the people of Ireland, achieved peacefully and by consent. I value deeply the close relationship between the Irish government and the British government. But I look forward equally to a new era of friendship and reconciliation between unionists and nationalists, in which each tradition can learn truly the value of the other.
The last 4 days have been among the most difficult of Bertie Ahern's life. Inside the talks complex there was praise and sympathy.
Bertie, thank you for all you did. It's a very difficult week, very difficult week. Yeah.
And everywhere there was joy and congratulations, and also relief that a critical and difficult set of negotiations were at an end. There were farewells for the main participants and others less directly involved, and a universal feeling that it couldn't have happened without the commitment of Senator George Mitchell and the persistence of others. David Davenpower, RTE News, Stormont.
Well, now I'm joined in studio by our political editor Donald Kelly with a summary of the agreement signed at Stormont today.
This agreement is based on fundamental constitutional and legislative change here and in Britain. Articles 2 and 3 of the Constitution, with the territorial claim to the north, are to be replaced so as to enshrine the consent principle and the aspiration to unity. If adopted, Article 2 will express the entitlement of all born on the island to be part of the Irish nation. Article 3 would recognise the will of the Irish nation to unity in harmony and friendship. On the British side, there's a commitment to legislate for unity if a majority in the North ever vote for it, and the 1920 Government of Ireland Act is to be scrapped. The agreement deals with the three strands of relationships on which the peace process was grounded. Strand 1 provides for the setting up of a Northern Ireland Assembly with 108 members elected under PR. Voting procedures in the body will have built-in protections for each side. The Assembly will be set up through legislation in the Dáil and Westminster and will have responsibility for the 6 Northern Ireland government departments. Now we turn to Strand 2. Within a short time of its establishment, ministers from the Assembly and the Dáil will meet in a North-South Council to decide on the number of cross-border bodies to be set up. These would implement decisions made by the Ministerial Council in up to 12 areas. They've been given up to October next to reach agreement. Otherwise, the Assembly will be suspended. In Strand 3, a British-Irish Council is proposed. This would comprise representatives of the British and Irish governments, as well as those from devolved institutions in the North, Scotland and Wales. This council will deal with matters of mutual interest and will be able to agree common policies or common actions. Importantly, today's agreement covers what George Mitchell called the sensitive areas of equality, policing, prisoners and decommissioning. There is to be an independent commission on policing to recommend changes which will seek to gain the RUC cross-community support. The early release of paramilitary prisoners would be speeded up, except for organisations which haven't established a ceasefire. Decommissioning will continue to be dealt with by the existing independent commission. The aim is to have decommissioning arrangements in force by the end of June. Back now to Brian in Belfast.
Well, you've been hearing details of the agreement from Donald Kelly. I can show you the agreement itself. I've just been handed this copy of the agreement reached here today. I can tell you the booklet is still warm. It's just straight off the printing presses, and a copy of this document, this agreement, will be going to every house in Northern Ireland over the next 2 weeks, so the people of Northern Ireland themselves can read what is in here and judge for themselves whether this is an agreement which in the referendum they will give their crucial and essential assent to. This is the agreement which will be the focus of all the debate and discussion over the coming days and weeks. Well, as you might imagine, the reaction here at Stormont has been one of delight on the part of those who had negotiated for so long to get to this point. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Mo Mowlam, said she was very happy for the people of Northern Ireland, who now had the opportunity, she said, to build a peaceful future for themselves. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, David Andrews, said he hoped the agreement would get resounding approval north and south when it's put to the people next month. Michael O'Kane has this report.
As the politicians emerged from castle buildings, there was a tangible sense of emotion, a tangible sense of relief. Exhausted as they were, they immediately delivered their own interpretation of the agreement. For David Trimble, despite Jeffrey Donaldson's exit, claiming he could not morally support the agreement, the union was more secure than ever.
We rise from this table knowing that the union is stronger than it was when we sat down. We know that the fundamental act of the union is there intact.
We want to
For one of the main architects of this process, many challenges lie ahead.
that fundamental to resolving this problem is agreement. And agreement threatens no section of our people, but challenges both sections of our people and their public representatives in particular to come forward with new thinking.
A view echoed by the Sinn Féin leader, Gerry Adams.
That's the way nationalists and Republicans will come to this. They'll come to it sceptically, but I think hopefully, and they will ask themselves, could it be a new beginning? Could it be a false dawn? And what we in political leadership have to do is to manage all of that, be measured and try and move forward.
It's about recognising the need to encompass all attitudes and all opinions, all religions, all creeds, all colours, sexes, disabilities, within a diverse and honourable society, that which my society has never been.
For a relieved chairman of the talk, Senator George Mitchell, a belief that the parties will sort out whatever difficulties arise.
They showed the leadership today in approving it, and I think they'll show the leadership in selling it. Sure, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be dissent. That's in the nature of democracy. But I think when people understand what's at stake, they won't want to go back to what they've had over the past 30 years.
Senator Mitchell now goes back to his home in the US. All the participants here would agree, a job well done. Michael O'Kane, RTE News, Stormont.
The Taoiseach said today was a day we should treasure. Bertie Ahern said it promised a bright future where a line could be drawn under a bloody past. He also said he was confident the paramilitaries wanted change.
At Dublin Airport to welcome the Taoiseach were members of the Cabinet as well as his brother Maurice. I asked Mr Ahern for his thoughts as he brought this historic agreement home to Dublin.
The nice thing about today, I think, was the fact that all the parties, the chairman, the governments, all were in favour of the agreement, all were prepared to sell the agreement. Nobody was asking them, nobody was dragging them. They were all totally out there pushing this deal. And that is, I think, because we succeeded in doing what we've been trying to do, to make it comprehensive and to make it balanced, to make it fair.
It still looked quite dodgy at times, even until the early hours of this morning. What was the psychological turning point when you knew it was definitely on?
When we had to tie down the institutional issues. We had to make sure that the Assembly in the North had both UUP and SDLP support. And if you take it that these parties have not been talking for many years and have not really cooperated for a long way back, that they agreed that document without, with the assistance of the government, but without intervention from the government directly. That was a major step. The second thing was when today, when we got near the wire, like all of these issues, when it became clear that if we really had change, if we had power sharing, and when we got people to agree to that, of course people got nervous about that. Then people said, well, you know, is it real? But in the end of the day, people said, yes, it is real, and we're going to have a go at it.
Are you convinced that the paramilitaries on both sides will actually now undertake decommissioning?
Well, what the Prime Minister has underwritten is that they will start the process. The process could take some time. But without mentioning names, when you're in these direct discussions for hours on end and nights on end, and since last Tuesday week, effectively, I've been closeted with these people in one form or another. You hear what their real inner feelings are. And I'm heartened to say that if we make progress, if we change, none of the parties, including those who would have been paramilitaries in the past, they want to see a change and they want to move on.
The Taoiseach also said he hoped to hold the referenda on the agreement towards the end of May so that elections for the Northern Ireland Assembly could take place in June. Una Claffey, RTE News, Dublin Airport.
Well, of course, it's not just here and in Britain that events at Castle Buildings have been watched closely during the day, during the weeks indeed. President Clinton has hailed today's historic settlement. He said the parties had made a brave decision. Speaking from the White House, he vowed to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who were seeking to end violence in Northern Ireland. The President played a central role in the final hours of the Stormont talks, consulting with party leaders right up to the moment of the final announcement. Here's our Washington correspondent, Mark Little.
President Clinton brought the media into the Oval Office tonight to celebrate a settlement in Northern Ireland. This was, he said, the end of one era and the beginning of another.
After a 30-year winter of sectarian violence, Northern Ireland today has the promise of a springtime of peace.
The President has vowed to stick with the process in the days ahead, but he didn't make any promises about another trip to Ireland or new economic initiatives for the North. Instead, he appealed for unity against those who want this settlement to fail.
In the days to come, there may be those who will try to undermine this great achievement, not only with words, but perhaps also with violence. All the parties and all the rest of us must stand shoulder to shoulder to defy any such appeals.
The White House played a key role in making this settlement possible. In the early hours of this morning, as the talks faltered, Bertie Ahern and Tony Blair asked the President to intervene. Mr. Clinton worked the phones until 5 in the morning, Washington time, talking to John Hume, George Mitchell, and crucially, Gerry Adams. Then, as the talks faltered again this afternoon, Tony Blair asked the President to intervene once more and talk to Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble. He did so at 19 minutes past 5. A few minutes later, George Mitchell announced a deal had been done.
they deserve the credit. I just tried to do what I was asked to do. If I played a positive role, I'm grateful to have had the chance to do so.
When the history books are written, they'll record how a sleepless night in Belfast produced an historic agreement. But they'll also talk about a sleepless night in Washington and how once again President Clinton proved to be a crucial player in the peace process. Mark Little, RTE News at the White House.
Well, today's developments in the north have been welcomed across the political spectrum here in the Republic. Leaders of the three main churches also praised the outcome.
Welcoming the agreement, the Fine Gael leader John Bruton said his party would play its part in seeking support for it.
Absolutely. As far as Fine Gael is concerned, our raison d'etre as a party has always been to achieve reconciliation between Unionists and Nationalists on the island of Ireland and peace in the island. That's right back to our foundation. So we will be campaigning for this agreement, not just on a pro forma basis, but passionately in favour to get people to support it.
The Labour Party leader Rory Quinn said he believed the overwhelming majority of Irish people would accept the agreement, while the Taoiseach and PD leader Mary Harney also expressed confidence in the outcome of a referendum on the issue.
I believe the vast majority of the people in Ireland will be prepared to change our constitution to reflect the reality, to reflect the fact that what we aspire to is a united Ireland based on consent, not one that's based on coercion.
The Democratic left leader Proinsias de Rossa said there would be great pressure on the parties in the north over the coming months, and he paid tribute to Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams for his management of the process within the Republican movement. The Catholic primate Archbishop Sean Brady also welcomed developments.
On Good Friday, Christ died that we might have life and have it to the full. Easter is a time of great hope, it's a time of victory over death, it's a time of new life, and that hope sustains all of us these days.
The Church of Ireland Archbishop of Dublin, Dr. Walton MP, said he was delighted.
I rejoice that this has been made. Heavens only knows the people in the north have had enough of their Good Fridays with a small G, if you like, but it's more like Easter Sunday now.
The convener of the Presbyterian Church and Government Committee, George McCullough, said the deal must be given a fair chance. Cathy Milner, RTE News.
Well, of course, as we've been emphasising again and again throughout this programme, the agreement reached between the governments and the parties here is just the first stage in a process of ratification which will continue over many weeks. People north and south will be asked to give their verdict. So even the initial reaction of people here in Northern Ireland has been keenly anticipated and analysed during the evening. Tony Connolly has been gauging loyalist and Republican opinion on the streets of West Belfast.
As the icy wind whipped around the Shankill Road, there was no obvious euphoria on the streets or sense that the nightmare was over. Just caution, some bitterness and perhaps a measure of hope.
Will you vote for an agreement?
No, it's not. We're so down the river.
I suppose if peace comes at the end of the day, that's what you want really, like, isn't it? Well, it's questionable, you know. I'd have to sort of think about it a little bit, you know. I wouldn't want too much of the South involvement, you know, in the affairs of Northern Ireland.
And what about Sinn Féin participating in a power-sharing cabinet or committee? Give Sinn Féin to get their guns back first, put our weapons, simple as that.
In nationalist West Belfast, the headlines spoke of a deal being done, but whatever the suspicion, it was clear trust was being vested in the representatives of nationalism.
As long as there is equality for everybody, and that union's getting their own way, as Bob was done.
If Gerry Adams is happy enough, I'd be happy enough.
If there was an assembly and so on that guarantees the right of unionists to stay part of the United Kingdom, would you be happy to sign up to that?
Well, if those people want to be that way, that's okay, as long as that there's equality, that we're part of Ahern, and that we stay in there, and it is Ahern too, no matter why they're in the United Kingdom or not.
Perhaps as a sign of what the future may hold, apprentice boys at Balnafie called off a planned march through the nationalist Lower Ormeau on Easter Monday. Residents there welcomed the move.
I think everybody should take a lead from the talks process and sit down and find a long-term resolution to the marching issue through dialogue. The marching issue could be used to destroy the peace process.
The Malone Road, where middle-class life sometimes seems a million miles from the conflict. Outside St Bridget's Catholic Church, the sense of history was perhaps slowly creeping in.
We're delighted to see this day coming, you know. It's just very hard to believe that the parties got together and some sort of agreement, so we're obviously delighted.
We have children, and it's great. We can say how pleased we are. Thank God.
These youngsters in the city centre have never known real peace.
You know, there's only so much you can do. If them people agree, if the politicians agree in peace, then it's not going to say that everyone else in Northern Ireland will agree in peace.
But they might yet just lose that youthful pessimism and, as they grow older, enjoy the fruits of a normal society. Tony Connolly, RTE News, Belfast.
Initial reaction from Belfast tonight. Joining me, our Northern editor, David Davenport. David, you were here all the way through those long 22 months. Did you really think you'd see tonight?
I think when I asked myself that question earlier today, Brian, I think the answer is yes. When I came here to Belfast 6 years ago, the first thing I detected was a certain war weariness on the part of the IRA. I felt that they really were looking for a way out. When David Trimble became leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, I thought he was a new broom. He was anxious to sweep away the past insofar as he can in that very constricted role. And I knew once he got into these talks that he would want to copper fasten that break with the past.
Well, the key question is, can David Trimble, having done the deal, deliver his own supporters?
I think he will. I think it'll be very difficult. I know that Jeffrey Donaldson was very, very angry about the turn of events today. He left. He will not be attending the meeting of the Ulster Unionist Party tomorrow as he's on vacation, but there will be a crucial meeting on Saturday week. I believe David Trimble will carry the day, but his leadership prospects, I would say, will face a challenge the next opportunity that arises. He may survive that, but who knows?
David, thank you very much indeed. And that is the main news this Good Friday 1998, for the last time from Castle Buildings here at Stormont and from the crew in Dublin. A very good evening to you.
There being no further business to come before this proceeding, it is concluded. Good luck. Have a happy Easter. God bless all the people of Northern Ireland.
Thank you.